most people see a big house or a nice car, they often wonder, what does that person do for a living? How can they even afford all of that? As a certified financial planner, I get a front row seat to something most people never see. I work with dozens of high net worth families from different careers, personalities, and backgrounds, and after almost 10 years of doing this, there are some patterns I've seen start to emerge. People often ask me, how do people actually build wealth? Is it all inheritance? Is it crypto? Or is it just pure luck? The answer is, as you might expect, more nuanced. Today, I want to walk you through 5 general profiles I consistently see among wealthy families, plus 1 bonus category, and where most people realistically fit. Stick around until the end because the last profile is where we see the biggest upside and the biggest risk. All right, before we start, just a quick clarification. This isn't about flexing lifestyles, supercars, or $30,000 vacations. It's about how wealth is actually built, which is often quietly, consistently, and often very unglamorously. And importantly, none of this is financial advice. These are just patterns I've observed over the years in working with real high net worth families. All right, let's start with the most accessible form of wealth building I see, diligent savers. These clients often will surprise people. They don't necessarily earn 6-figure incomes. Sometimes they do, but quite often they don't. What they do have is reasonable spending habits, consistency, and time. This is the profile described in the popular book, The Millionaire Next Door. Think of people like engineers, teachers, healthcare professionals, people with stable careers who live below their means and invest early. They're not trying to get rich overnight and buy things they don't need. They're trying to avoid being poor later in life by buying freedom today. And here's the key insight I've seen with many people. Beyond a certain point, money has what's called diminishing marginal utility, which is just a fancy way of saying each dollar buys you less happiness. Think of it like a cup of coffee. First cup in the morning is amazing, gives you the shot of caffeine, but by your 7th or 8th cup of coffee, it's still good, but not nearly as life-changing as that first cup in the morning. So this type of wealth won't fund private jets, but it will fund financial security, flexibility, and a comfortable retirement. This is the most accessible path to wealth for most people. Now, the key to being wealthy in this category is getting started early and letting compound interest do the heavy lifting. As Einstein supposedly said, compound interest is the 8th wonder of the world. All right, so the next profile of clients we often work with are high-income professionals. This group often starts saving and investing later, but makes up for it with their higher incomes. For the types of people in this category, you can think of people like doctors, dentists, lawyers, and executives in large companies. These clients usually have 2 defining traits. First is that they have very high earning power, and second, a very high temptation to spend it as well. This is what's known as lifestyle creep. As your income increases, so does your expenses as you feel comfortable with your extra cash flow. It's natural to have some of this to make sure you're enjoying life along the way, but you want to make sure you're saving a good majority of your income so that it's not all to waste. High-income professionals often have a challenge between balancing their student debt, lifestyle inflation, and trying to save aggressively. Now, as you might expect, high income alone does not create wealth. I've seen people earning hundreds of thousands of dollars per year who are effectively broke with nothing to show for it except for a shocking DoorDash bill. At this level, discipline matters more than the math, because no matter how much you make, it's shockingly easy to spend all of it on a monthly basis. A good rule of thumb here to remember, whether you're a high-income earning professional or just getting started, it's not what you earn, it's what you keep. Okay, so another type of client we often work with are people who took concentrated bets. This one can be a little uncomfortable, but it's real. Some people get wealthy because they were right, and some people because they were just downright lucky. Some examples here would be those that maybe bought Bitcoin very early, owning a single tech stock that has exploded, company founders with a strong exit, or executives paid heavily in stock options. Now, often these wins are explained as skill. In reality, most are a mix of skill and luck. Often it's very difficult to tell the difference between the two because there's a lot of overlap. In his book, Fooled by Randomness, Nassim Taleb breaks down this concept really well. Highly recommend that book for anyone who's getting into investing, by the way. It's important to remember that for every single massive success story, there's also a graveyard of people who took similar risks but just didn't make it. That's why we're generally cautious about recommending concentrated bets. Yes, high risk can mean high reward, but the risk part of the equation eventually has to show up. If there wasn't a risk of financial ruin, the high reward from these bets wouldn't exist. So this category produces some of the wealthiest clients we have, but also some of the most painful financial stories we've come across. Again, this is not a recommendation to go out and put all your money on red at the roulette table. It's simply to share some insight on where some wealthy people are getting their money. Just because it happens to them once doesn't necessarily mean it would happen again. In fact, this is often how we see people lose all of their wealth. They get lucky once, mistake it for skill, and keep taking big risks until their luck eventually runs out. All right, so the next category we'll talk about is those that inherited money. Now, this one's obvious and often covered in the news, but it's often misunderstood. Yes, some people do inherit their wealth. And with the largest wealth transfer in history happening right now, we'll see more of it, especially as the baby boomer generation is aging. But here's what's often missed. Inheritance is rarely the full story. Many people were already financially successful before receiving inherited money. There's sometimes a narrative online that inheritance explains most wealth. The fact is, it usually doesn't. Sometimes it's used as a way to avoid personal responsibility instead of focusing on what can actually be controlled. You can't choose your parents, but you can choose your habits. All right, so here's the bonus profile I mentioned at the beginning of the video, real estate investors. Now, we don't actually have many real estate investors as clients, mostly because their net worth is mostly tied up in their property. But anecdotally, I've known some extremely wealthy real estate investors. Now, what about real estate creates wealth? Well, there's a few things that real estate allows you to do. Number one, you can use leverage. Number two, it's a forced savings plan as you're paying down your principal on your mortgage. And number three, it's getting the long-term appreciation on the property. Now, there's a myth sometimes out there that real estate's a passive income source. Generally, from what I've seen, it's not passive and it's not easy. It takes some expertise and it's often illiquid. So keep in mind, real estate is not without risk, especially when interest rates rise, as we saw in 2022. But done well over decades, it can be powerful. Some financial planners like to downplay the role of real estate in a portfolio because they think everyone should be in investments because that's how they get paid. I think all investments have their place, but it's not an all or nothing approach. I do sometimes see some unfair comparisons between investing in real estate and the markets, which I'll be breaking down in a future video. All right, the final profile we see in high net worth families are business owners. This is the biggest category amongst our high net worth clients and aligns up perfectly on the risk-reward spectrum. Business owners take on immense amount of risk, whether that be financial, personal, or emotional. Many businesses fail, many are just barely breaking even. But for those who do succeed, the upside is unmatched. If you look at the wealthiest families in the world, you'll find that the majority of them either started or purchased a business. Especially in the last 40 years, the share of revenue being kept by business owners has increased. This is a complex topic that maybe I can touch on in a future video, but the truth is that business owners are definitely being compensated for the additional risk they're taking on. Wealth here usually comes from either strong cash flow reinvested over time or the eventual sale or exit from the business. This isn't a start a business and you'll be rich automatically story. It's a reminder that ownership still does create some of the largest financial outcomes, for better or worse. So what's the real takeaway here? Most wealth isn't built dramatically, it's built predictably. And for most people watching this, the diligent saver path combined with steady career growth is far more powerful than chasing these outlier stories. The goal isn't to win the lottery, but by investing consistently with enough time, it's like winning the lottery that takes 30 or 40 years before you can access the money. If you found this helpful, consider sticking around. I break down these concepts from a planning perspective every week. Thanks for watching.